Hello there, Force of Will players, and welcome back to another Wander Wednesday. This week, we're going to be taking a look at a deck that I have actually played in the most recent, OLS, as well as kind of the only new Frontier slash just cards in general that I really have owned within the past, year, 2 years. Stuff like that. I really liked the deck when it was first released in ADW, Attack on the Demonic World, and that deck in question is Faria Heroes, or Excalibur Genesis. So Faria Heroes kind of got its whole package in ADW. There is some extra stuff that we've added from previous sets, from later on sets, things that can kind of shore up what the deck is trying to do, but at its core it is very centralized around trying to OTK kill your opponent with Shining Heart. So today I'm actually going to be using, as you can kind of see on the screen already, forceofwind.online. I think having the pictures up all the time is pretty decent, so people can kind of filter through the cards. I'll say the card's name as I go over them, or at least part of the name, so you're able to search it up on either Force of Wind itself or Untap or whatever platform you're trying to make your decks on. So anyway, getting started, first off we have 4 Flute and then 4 Tea Party before the Decisive Duel. So both of those cards, why am I talking about them together? They kind of serve the same purpose. And why is that? So Excalibur Genesis itself, our ruler that we're using, gets the effect to put a guidance counter on either itself or a target entity once per turn at the start of your main phase. Excalibur Genesis itself has 3 guidance effects. So guidance is triggered when an entity gets a guidance counter. In this case, it would be Excalibur Genesis getting the guidance counters. Our other heroes, Shining Heart as well as Hero of Water and Charlotte, also gain effects with guidance counters and having guidance counters placed on them. Excalibur Genesis's 3 effects are to produce a free light will, to draw a card, and then to put a hero from your hand into play. So we get a free light will, right? So what are we going to do with it? What is the best thing we can do with it? And that typically is saving it for later use. So Flute is a light mana dork. So we get to use that singular light will. We invest nothing into it, right? We want to get more guidance on Excalibur Genesis because it needs 4 guidance counters in order to Judgment for 0. So we're just going to play a mana dork. Tea Party before the Decisive Duel, also kind of like a mana dork. You can put it, you use it, it gets RFG'd, and then you can put it back into the grave to recover your stone and draw a card, replace itself, right? So in the sense of Tea Party also replaces itself. Flute just gives you mana over and over and over again for you to use. Tea Party also gives your next Light Resonator cast Quick Cast, which Schrodinger down here has, but your other Light Resonators in the form of Lenneth, Faria, as well as Charlotte, do not. And it will mainly be impactful with Lenneth. I'll kind of talk about that when we get down here. But having that next Quick Cast be on a Resonator does actually help a lot. And it doesn't give it Quick Cast. You may play it as though it had Quick Cast, which means it still will get around stuff like Fair's Spell and things like that. So that is also fairly impactful. Shining Heart is our OTK line. His first effect is to burn your opponent's board. Second effect gives your J Resonators plus 200 in swiftness until the end of the turn. And his final passive continuous effect is when he has 3 or more guidance counters. Heroes you control gain the ability to deal double damage when they would deal damage. So for Shining Heart, he's a 700, so he would do 14, right? So that's how you get your OTK line started. The OTK, in order to do 4,000 to your opponent, if you just play a Shining Heart from your hand, and then you Judgment your Excalibur Genesis. Excalibur Genesis is a 15/15, so if all 3 counters get placed onto Shining Heart, it'll become a 1700 and gain swiftness. You attack, Shining Heart makes it also deal double damage because it's a hero. It deals 3400, and then you attack with Shining Heart for 1400 more. That's lethal against most decks, right? And it's still a lot of damage. Lenneth's effect is when it's put into play, you can search your deck for a 2-drop hero or lower, put it into play with a guidance counter on it. So it'll already trigger the guidance effects, and then its passive effect is entities we have with guidance counters gain eternal. It might just be heroes. We can actually check that real quick. I think we can check that. So entities you control with guidance counters on them gain eternal. So we can make our whole board gain eternal. So that is the benefit of Lenneth. Faria. So Faria, I'll just pop it up real quick. When it comes into play, you search your deck for any number of cards named first boon, reveal them, put them into your hand, and you can play your first one for free each turn. First boon, we've seen in kind of New Frontiers Lycion decks to be used as kind of a value engine off of Lycion. Here you can use it for that as well. That can be good. The other thing is you also can use it for its second effect in this deck to produce 4 wills of any combination of attributes in order to play heroes. A very kind of impactful play line is you can use your Excalibur Genesis effect to put a Faria into play, add your 3, activate your first boon for free, produce 4, play a Lenneth. Lenneth gets Shining Heart, and now you have Faria, Shining Heart, and a Lenneth in play, as well as 1 leftover light will to pay for, or 1 leftover will to pay for heroes if you so choose. So those are just decent lines. It's what you're searching. Excuse me. Faria is kind of your value engine, your engine to kind of get going. Lenneth is kind of your kill line along with Shining Heart, because Lenneth gets Shining Heart. Shining Heart is just Shining Heart. Magna. Magna is a hero. Why am I only playing 2, you might ask? So we do have full red mana, right? Where all 10 of our stones, as you can kind of see at the bottom, will produce red will. So it's not an issue of having inconsistent red will. It's more of a case of it's not the most impactful card. The reason why we still play 2 over the other things is because it's searchable, because it's a hero, right? So with Magna being a hero, it's searchable with Schrodinger's call. Just 1 light will search your deck for a hero, which means that you can search for a way to put guidance counters on Excalibur Genesis by force. Because the only 2 ways to do that are God's Breath with Magna's other alternative half, or Schrodinger itself. Outside of Excalibur Genesis' passive effect at the start of your main phase, those are the only 2 ways to get guidance counters on your ruler. So it being searchable is nice. The other thing is a lot of our stuff is just put into, our free will is light will. So sometimes maybe we don't draw Flute, we don't draw Tea Party. We just want to play a Schrodinger and draw a card, and maybe have a Schrodinger in play, advance the turn counter by 1, right? For our guidance effect on Excalibur Genesis. So it is just a more impactful effect like that. Guidance. Guidance just puts a guidance counter on an entity you control and you draw a card. Guidance is always playable because your stones count as entities, so you don't ever have to worry about it being just dead in your hand. It'd be better if you can proc Shining Heart, right? Or your opponent tries to kill your Lenneth in response to its effect. You give it Eternal because it'll give itself Eternal if it has a guidance counter. So on and so forth. And then guidance also just replaces itself, so it's kind of a light filter that is doing what your deck wants to be doing as well. Schrodinger we kind of talked about earlier. Its rest effect is also fairly impactful, so you can use it to rest rulers that are attacking, or if you're playing against Draco Witch, you can rest all their magical dragons as long as you have a way to give yourself guidance counters and other things like that. Schrodinger is not searchable, right? It is not a hero, it is just a beast. So that is just the unfortunate part about Schrodinger. Charlotte is your value engine. You can kind of do some interesting little combo lines with Charlotte, especially if you need cards. So if your hand is Lenneth, guidance, and nothing else, you can, if you have your 3 will or your 3rd counter on Excalibur Genesis and you're just out of other cards, you can put a Lenneth into play, get your Charlotte. Charlotte gives you that extra light will. You can use that light will to play guidance, put another counter on Charlotte. Guidance draws you a card, Charlotte draws you 3 cards. So now you have an Eternal Charlotte that's 1 more counter away from becoming a 14/1400 with Barrier. You have your Lenneth in play, and you've gone up a card from earlier, pretty much. So Charlotte's just in there to kind of serve as a value engine in the event that you need it. Hero of Water is used as a form of disruption as well as protection. It gives all heroes +200/+200 in barrier, as long as there are 2 or more guidance counters on it. So if you play Lenneth to get your Hero of Water, assuming your opponent might hit it or something, that is a way to play around. The other thing is, if you get Hero of Water, you can also return resonators you control to your hand. So you can return like Schrodinger's in order to do that. If you have a Magna in play for some reason, you can return it to your hand to use it as God's Breath, and other things like that. So Hero of Water just has some tech options. We talked about Schrodinger's Call, it just searches a hero. Last but not least, Dance of Spirits, right? You go up to 2 Light Will if you go first, or if you're second, you also go up to 2 Light Will. You go up to 3 if you keep your Energize, right? You play your Flute, you call your Stone, you have Flute, that's 2. If you have Energize, that's 3. And because all of our will is light and red, primarily, we also have the Moonshades for 5 color, we'll always have the 2 light for Dance of Spirits, so we can either play it on our opponent's turn, if we see that they're starting to combo off, or we can play it going into our turn, if they haven't really done a whole lot, and we're trying to OTK them. That being said, moving into the stones, there is something specific about the stones, and that is Awakened Magic Stone the Earth. So Awakened Magic Stone the Earth actually has the text of, when you do Judgment of a Light Ruler, you recover this card. Excalibur Genesis is a Light Ruler, and it judgments for 0. So if you have Earths in play, you can actually get free will from judgmenting. You can ramp up via will. Excalibur Genesis does put a stone into play tapped when it enters. However, you've already fulfilled the judgment process, so even if you put in an earth, it won't untap it. So there's no like weird combo line there. But it is just potentially free will just because you're playing that stone in your deck. So if you just get that stone early, like it's your first stone of the turn you judgment, you're going to have 2 free light will or an extra light will to do whatever you want with it. So that is the deck. It is fairly streamlined, as you can see. It's just a lot of 4-ofs. But this is how I've been playing it. An option that you can actually make, that I've been kind of looking at, because Lenneth itself is fairly susceptible to destruction, counter spells, things like that, like Lorite, Feasting, things to stifle the enter effect. You can potentially drop a Heat Ray or 2 and put in like Light Vapors or the Blue Light Stone, and then cut some amount of guidances, maybe Magnas, maybe Schrodinger's Calls. You'd cut some of these other 4-of consistency pieces and play Setting the Stage of Providence within the main deck in order to kind of shore up like an anti-cancel spell type deal. Because again, if you're like, say you go second, right? You have your Energize, your free Light Will, you play your Flute, you move into your opponent's turn, you Dance of Spirits your opponent with Energize and Flute, and then on your turn, if you have that Blue Will, before untaps, you can Setting the Stage, and then kind of go off from there, right? So those are lines that you have available to you. It is an interesting thing to kind of deck build around, but I like this version as just kind of a baseline, like play against anything type deal, right? Sideboard, again, I don't normally make sideboards. I don't have a sideboard for this list, but it is worth noting that Charlotte, Inheritor of the 7th Power, the 2-drop from the 7th that searches outside the game for one total cost light chance, is a hero. And it does actually get +100/+100 for each guidance counter you have in play. So Excalibur Genesis plays very well into God's Arts and like God's Art type rulers, so any of really like the Fallen Angels and things like that, because you're only really paying 1 mana for that Charlotte. So again, if you do like the Flute thing, you just have a Flute and a 1 will up, and they God Art, you can Charlotte, cancel the God Art, or do something else with the Charlotte. So it is worth noting that Charlotte, I would put at least 3, maybe 4 of it in my sideboard for this deck specifically, and then kind of have a toolbox with it, and then add some extra stuff to kind of filter out the sideboard depending on what I'm playing against. But there you go. That is our deck for this Wander Wednesday. I will be releasing I'll be going on vacation this coming Monday. However, there will be a Wander Wednesday for each of those weeks as well. They'll be pre-recorded and just released at a specific time on those Wednesdays. But thank you all so much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.